Thank you again so much. We are going to now move to our Cheyenne Arapaho segment, and we have with us two up here on the stage. We have two, but we have multiple in the room, descendants of Cheyenne and Arapaho who were incarcerated at the fort. Standing is Bill TallBear, and he is the current compliance officer for the Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribe Office of the Governor. And throughout more than 39 years of service to the tribes, Bill has served in multiple directorships. And Bill is happily married to Kathleen. Where's Kathleen this morning? Kathleen, and for 38 years, and they have 3 children and 7 grandchildren. So again, thank you for coming, and more proof you are still here, right? And we're happy to be here with you. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the following speaker, Quinton Romanos, who is Cheyenne as well, and then I'll have Bill talk, and then Quinton, and then we'll take questions for all 3 speakers. So Quinton Romanos, you're going to go together?
No, he's first.
No, I know you're going to go first, but I was just going to introduce you so that we can transition into, is that fine? Well, you can go ahead and go. Okay, we'll have Bill go first, and then I'll introduce Quinton. Okay, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Lee. Nakadowa. Nahisha Iviv. Ipiviwonat. We have our language department here. Good morning in Cheyenne. And my Indian name is Bull Bear. And my English name is Bill TallBear. I am the son of William TallBear, Sr., and he passed away from COVID in 2010. And my mother is Minnie Flynn, drunkard, from the Drunkard family, and we're from the Thomas area. I grew up in Deer Creek, which is the Indian community between Thomas and Weatherford. But I want to thank Noreen, Starr, and Max Bear, and all of the THIPO officers who put this together. This started out a small project with Noreen, working with many individuals with Fagler and National Park Service, University of Central Florida. And I'm glad to see this many people here today. And I hope that the story of our people who were affected by the events leading up to and during the time of imprisonment at Fort Marion. Many of us were affected, many tribes, the Comanche, Kiowas, Caddos, Cheyenne, and Arapaho. And we have to take this time to tell our side of the story. And there were a lot of good things that were said here yesterday and this morning. One thing that that is sticking with me is that we've always been here, and we're always going to be here. We're leaving our footprint. But I have some photos here. There's Cora Prayer Chief. She is the granddaughter. She is the daughter of Prayer Chief, and Prayer Chief is the son of Graybeard. And Graybeard was a dog soldier. We have societies in our tribe, societies that govern our tribe. You know, nowadays we have tribal government, we have chairmen, we have governors. But in older times, our tribal affairs were handled by societies, headsmen. And our chiefs were the peacekeepers. But Graybeard was the son-in-law of Blackshin. And Blackshin was a Sutai chief. And when Blackshin died, Graybeard assumed his position. Graybeard was a medicine man. And in 1875, the Army identified Graybeard as a ringleader of the Cheyenne resistance. He was one of those that believed in the old way, you know. And he was opposed to peace. And there was a meeting at Medicine Lodge, and he opposed it. He was one of those who opposed peace. So in 1875, he was sent to Fort Marion, and you know, we all know what happened in Baldwin. And you know, there's situations in our lives that we're put to a test. You know, there's a test put to us. And Graybeard, I truly believed that he didn't want to be away from his family, his people, which is why he escaped and was shot. And you know, left in a foreign land. And yesterday I had the privilege of traveling to Baldwin, and you know, I was able to, you know, pay homage, you know, to where he was, you know, where he's at, you know. And you know, I could feel energy. I could feel his presence. And you know, when I was asked to come down here, you know, I prayed about it. You know, I talked to my family members, my family, and I told them what they asked me to do. You know, come down and you know, talk about Graybeard. And you know, I was given their blessing, and that was good. So, you know, I'm just really glad to be here. Graybeard had a daughter, Corps Prayer Chief. Corps Prayer Chief is here with my younger brother, Christopher TallBear. She passed away. Cora was. She passed away in 1972 at the age of 88, and I had the opportunity to, to meet her, to know her. She was a very, very loving lady, and her daughter was named Minnie Flynn, and that was my grandmother, and she passed away in 1963. And then my mother is Minnie Flynn Drunkard, and she passed away in 1984. And then there's me and my older sister Ramona, and then my baby brother Chris, and there's that little guy with the striped shirt. That's me. But Cora had many. Cora had other children. White Buffalo Woman, Anasta Hamilton. Our Indian people. We start out this like this, and then we expand, and our families grow, and that's good, because as Indian people, we believe in life. There's nothing better in this world than to see the creation of life, because that means that things are gonna carry on. And I believe that all of us, all the prisoners down here at Fort Marion, all the descendants that are here with us today, that we all have different stories. We have our own unique family stories to tell. And I encourage everyone to continue that. And there's a lot of work to be done with this project. So we're just at the start of it. But that's all I have to say. I'll turn it over to Quinton. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. These are difficult and painful truths to share with us, and we really do appreciate it. Thank you, Bill. Quinton Romanos is Cheyenne, and as an enrolled citizen of the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes, Quinton Romanos has dedicated most of his career in the Indian education field to promote and develop educational initiatives and opportunities to improve the educational levels of Native American students and tribal members. Quinton did his graduate studies in gifted, talented education at Oklahoma City University in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma in 1993. His undergraduate studies in mathematics at Southwestern Oklahoma State University in Weatherford, Oklahoma. And he was a former member on the Board of Trustees at Bacon College in Muskogee, Oklahoma, a board member of the Oklahoma Native Youth Language Fair at the University of Oklahoma, and former president of the school board, very important position, at Riverside Indian School in Anadarko, Oklahoma. Quinton currently serves on the board of directors as the executive director of Tribal Education Department's National Assembly, and he served 2 years in the U.S. Army as a field artillery officer. He's also served as president for the National Indian Education Association, is currently the moderator of the Watonga Indian Baptist Church. So thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you for Noreen. Thank you for Cheyenne Arapaho tribes for funding my way to come here. I always wanted to visit. I've been here before, but I didn't know any of the information was given. I want to tell you, I was raised in public school in northwest Oklahoma, and I hated history. You know that? I really did. I didn't like the way it was presented to me. I was just wondering, how many of you have heard the term, kill the Indian, save the man? Anybody? We're going to talk a little bit about that. Here's a history fact. How many have heard of Louisiana Purchase? Anybody? Do you own a car? Yes. You do? Can I sell your car to her? So in history, we're taught the United States government bought the land. Hey, we were already living here, so how can they sell the land? Henceforth, that's where treaties came about. Cheyenne Arapaho tribes, we owned through treaties most of Colorado, parts of Kansas, Nebraska, until they found what? Gold. Gold. They started moving us. Eventually, we landed in Oklahoma. My son has prepared some slides. It's easy to, trace some of my history because Romanos, we've always had that name, Romanos. And a lot of the descendants, they intermarried, and so the descendants, they don't always have that same name as the prisoner. So, first of all, my two sons, Chris Romanos and J.R. Romanos, stand up in the back, please. Oh, okay, sure. Okay, this is a picture of Henry Romanos, and this is how they dressed up back then. And how much time do the students have? Anybody? How much? Okay. All right. This is okay. This is my descendancy. Romanos, the prisoner here, he took the allotment name Henry Crothers Romanos. He also served as a scout for the United States Army in Oklahoma. I need some water here. Somebody got any water? Henceforth, when he passed away, he got a military tombstone, and he also got a flag. So I also like to tell everybody, not only was he a POW, but he also served with the military. So I think that's kind of, distinction. And he wasn't the only one. There was others who served as scouts in Cheyenne Arapaho territory. And then his son, John Romanos, who died in 1935, his son, Marion Romanos, my dad, served in World War II. He was a combat veteran. He had the Silver Star, and then there's me, and I'm a Vietnam-era veteran. I didn't go to Vietnam, but I was drafted into military at that time. Went to school in Southwestern Oklahoma State University. My son back there, he studied back there, Chris Romanos. I have other kids, Perry Romanos and Mara Romanos. I have 10 grandchildren. So, been around a long time. And here's a picture of them, one of the birthdays that we did have. And so I want to thank my son for preparing that. I wanted to ask you, if we were living in Israel, where would all the young men be at, young women? You'd be in the army. You'd be in the military. In World War II, Pearl Harbor happened. The next day, they declared war on Japan. 120,000 Americans signed up for the military when that happened. 125,000. This is November. For Cheyennes, there are two eventful historic events, one in Colorado, Sand Creek Massacre, that happened in 1874, 1878 in Oklahoma. General Custer attacked a peaceful band of Cheyennes on the Ouachita. We call that Black Kettle Massacre. The United States government calls it the Battle of the Black Kettle. So if you were a Cheyenne warrior back then, Just like Pearl Harbor being attacked. When you want, to some payback, when you want, to do something about that. So that's what you're talking about, the warriors here at Fort Marion. You think they were just going out there and doing what they were doing just because they wanted to? There was motivation behind that. The people sitting here, we're the lucky ones. We're the lucky ones. We're descended from people who got away, who was able to survive the attacks. Can you imagine everybody has a home? Can you imagine if someone says, oh, you're living in a peaceful area, and all of a sudden somebody's attacking you? What would you do? What if they were attacking your family? What would you do? Would you say, oh, I know you're sorry about that, hope it doesn't happen again? No, you'd want to do something. So that's the motivation for those warriors that were captured. So these attacks that happened, the warriors weren't around, or probably would have been a different story. But I wanted to tell you that, what you learn in history isn't always truthful. I remember sitting in history, that was one of the classes I didn't want to know about. Painful to listen to them. I could regurgitate the facts. I remember staying up all night doing these hard studies and going taking my tests, go to sleep, and I forget everything. I remember that. But history is living history. If you don't like history, then you need to start looking for your own family's history. Where did they come from? What did they do? How did they survive? How did they get to the point that you're actually sitting in this room listening to someone that's talking about Cheyenne Arapaho history? How'd you get here? You may think you know about your parents, but I guarantee you don't know everything about them. And I guarantee you, if you don't know that much about your parents, there's probably less that you know about your grandparents. And there's probably even less that you know about your great-grandparents. After I graduated from high school, in which my history knowledge of Native America was Cherokee Nation, Trail of Tears, who were on the other side of the state. On the other side of I-35, they were the civilized tribes. We were called the uncivilized tribes on the west side of the state. So I knew about them, but I didn't. Sitting right in the middle of Cheyenne Arapaho reservational boundaries in Watauga, I knew little about Cheyenne Arapaho history. And even though where I lived at, up a couple of miles away, there's a Romano's State Park. All I knew in grade school, they used to ask me, oh, do you get to go swimming? I said, sure, if I sneak in at nighttime after it closes, I get to go swimming. There is a famous Romano's in history, and one of my relatives thinks that this famous Romano's at Beecher's Island, it's the same Romano's as Henry. I'm not going to dispute that. I can't confirm it, but in Cheyenne history and tradition, we always named our people after relatives. So I'm sure if they're not the same person, the Henry Romano's we're talking about was related to that famous Romano's. And if you don't know, haven't heard about the Beecher Island fight, look it up. Very powerful medicine. But anyway, back to what I'm talking about here today. I think that what's important about the prisoners for my great-grandfather, at the end of the 3 years that they were here, they were given the choice: do you want to go back to Oklahoma and live the way you traditionally did, or do you want to go with Captain Pratt? And he took some prisoners to Hampton Institute, now known as Hampton University. And from there, they went to school there for a year. He went to Congress with some people who wanted to support Native Americans. And then from there, they got money to go to Carlisle Indian School. How many of you have heard of Carlisle Indian School? What's it famous for? Anybody? Famous athlete? Anybody? Jim Thorpe. There was thousands of Indians that went to school there. But that was the first start of government boarding school. It's not the first time that Indians were given a chance for education, but this was the first time that the federal government implemented education policy. I just got to think, wonder about what was the thinking of those warriors who said, here you go, you're going to go back home to be with your family, or here you can go with me to seek an education, maybe learn something better. I don't know what I would do if I was in that situation. I do know that the ones that went with him, they learned to speak English, they learned to write English. Some of them even became priests in Christian religion, Episcopal priests. That's a whole lot of story, but I just wonder about that. Surely they wanted to improve the lives of themselves and their families. But what happened at Carlisle started the boarding school movement. There was a lot of abuse. I don't know if you, how many of you students here were born in this century, 2000 something? Anybody? How many of you out there were born before that? Raise your hand. Talk to them about school discipline. It's a whole lot different than it is today. But I can imagine that, yes, they wanted an education, but I don't know if they knew that it meant the beginning of the end of the way they lived. Kill the Indian, save the man. My mother, who's a descendant from a Sand Hill family who survived the Sand Creek Massacre in Colorado, she was born fluent in Cheyenne. Spoke Cheyenne, didn't have to learn English when she went to school. Went to boarding school in a reservation called Quinton. And she told us the stories of getting her mouth washed out because she spoke Cheyenne. So she was fluent in Cheyenne, and as a little kid, I always remember relatives that come over and they'd just be talking in Cheyenne, just laughing and just, and I was, oh, what are they talking about? Finally, I grew up and I knew the value of, knowing your language. And I would go back to my mother and say, hey, Mom, how come you're fluent in Cheyenne? You never taught us how to speak Cheyenne. None of her 8 kids. She never taught none of us 8 kids. And she said, I want you to do that because of a better life. I didn't want you to be like, some of the Indians here. That was her perception that she got from boarding school. Now, I used to tease her. I used to say, hey, Mom, there is no language police going to come to your house and say, are you teaching your kids Cheyenne? I said, they're not going to do that. So she passed away being fluent in Cheyenne, never teaching us to speak Cheyenne. And I'm afraid she's not the only one. Many of the people who lived that era, they believed the same thing. So, that in effect affected us. And so going back to that phrase, kill the Indian, save the man. We're living in an era of self-determination where tribes can have the choice of developing their education policies. Right now, I feel like tribes are so dependent upon government grants and what have you. They think, well, we just need another grant, we'll do another language program. I always remember Henrietta Mann, a noted Cheyenne educator, and she kind of had these words that inspired me to go into education. She said, tribes were not waiting on the shores of the Atlantic for the Europeans to bring education to them. They already had education. They had a system of education. It wasn't a formalized classroom, but they had a system that perpetuated their civilization. Knowledge, information. They had a system, but we've gotten away. The boarding school environment, the policies that we have today, they've pushed us away. In a sense, they're not proactively killing Indian, but they're allowing for a system, the way we operate to be where it's going to be detrimental for the future of our kids. Right now, the Bureau has a system of how they identify Indians by blood quantum. 4/4, half, 1/4. Our tribe has lowered the blood quantum to 1/8, which is fine. Other tribes do it by descendancy, like the Cherokees, civilized tribes. Whole lot of jokes about that, but I'm not going to tell you any of those jokes. But think about that. Our tribe is now, some people call us Cartag and per cap Indians, and I know some of you don't know what I'm talking about. But that's their identity. They got a Cartag and they got to check once a year. And is it their fault? I mean, is it their parents' fault? Somebody's got to do something about that. Tribal government. The United States government is allowing tribes to set their own destiny. If you live on a tribal trust property, you can develop your own standards. So how many of you students are from Florida? Did you learn Florida history, government in school? You probably did, right? You had a class? Trick question. Who's the governor of Florida? Who? Who's the governor of Florida? Who? Oh, okay. I'm not wearing any lifters. No, that's a joke. But you are taught Florida history and government in your classes. So where does a tribal citizen learn about their history, their government? How's that going to be perpetuated? How's that going to flourish? Tribes need to step forward and set up systems so that they can teach their tribal citizens. Keep that in mind. I didn't say members. I'm a member of the Watonga Indian Baptist Church. I was a member of the Boy Scouts. I could have left them anytime I wanted. I'm a citizen of the Cheyenne Arapaho tribes, a nation. The United States government doesn't sign treaties with states. It's a nation-to-nation process. They sign treaties with Indian tribes. Thank you very much.